So we get to a calculator problem. We look at all of our answer choices, and we see that they have square roots and square root 2s and square root 3s in them. So that's a pretty good indication that you're going to use your calculator at some point. I'm going to move it off to the side just to kind of start drawing some pictures. It says the diagonals of a square measure 14 centimeters. What is the length of a side of the square? I think there are two ways to do this. I'm going to do the algebraic way first, which would be actually solving for the answer. If you draw a square, we don't know the side lengths of the square, so we might call them all x. And we're given that the diagonals are 14 units long. A lot of times when you're given diagonal measurements, you only draw one of them. So maybe I will draw this one right here. And I know that this is 14. Once you draw both of them, you cut your square into 4 sections, and we don't know a lot about the angles or anything, so we can't do much. But at this point, we have a square, so we have a right angle, and we have a right triangle problem. We have one side of x, the other side of x, and the longest side is 14. And we can actually write out this equation using Pythagorean theorem and solve for x. So we would take one side, which is x, we would square it. We would add the other side, which is also x, and square it, and we would get 14 squared. If you get to this equation, you could either start taking your answer choices one at a time and plugging them in to see if it works, or if you feel comfortable with your algebra skills, you could solve this equation for x. I'm going to go ahead and, I know I said algebra first, let's do the plugging in first, just so we can make sure we know how to do that. On your calculator, you want to deal with answer choice A first, which is 7 square root 2. You can literally type in 7 square root 2. Make sure you close your parenthesis, and it tells you that that is 9.899. So I'm going to write 9.899. What I'm going to do is I'm going to plug that in for x, and now I've rounded, I've cut off some of these digits, but if I get a number that's really close, it would be okay. So we would do 9.899 squared plus 9.899 squared, and we get 195.98, which is really close to about 196. So if the right side is 196, this would be the correct answer. So we can type in 7 root 2, oh sorry, wrong one. We can do 14 squared, and we have 196. So I'm pretty sure that it's going to be answer choice A. That's kind of my bet, because we plugged it in, and it got us a very close answer. I could try some of the other answer choices, and we'll talk some logic in a second. But let's go ahead and solve this and see that we do get 7 square root 2. So we have our equation, x squared plus x squared is equal to 14 squared. On the left side, we have an x squared and an x squared, and when we add two things together, it tells us how many we have. We have 2 x squared terms, and that's going to equal 14 squared, which is 196. We need to solve for x, so we need to get rid of this coefficient first, and then we'll deal with the exponent second. We divide by 2, and we get x squared is equal to, let's see, 196 over 2, which is 98. And, pardon the bells, we have x squared is equal to 98. To undo squaring, you need to square root both sides. And you get x is equal to the square root of 98, which is, 9.899. In algebra, you also worked on simplifying radicals. You would factor the 98, you would find that 4 is a factor. Or 2 is a factor, and 7 is a factor twice. I'm not too worried about that. I think if you can get to the square root of 98, you could see which of these decimal numbers is closest. The last thing I want to do is I'm going to write down the decimal numbers for each of these. We should be able to cross off a couple of answer choices as well. Very quickly, 7 root 3 is 12.12. 14 root 2 is 19.79, and 14 root 3 is 24.25. If you look at our picture, 14 is the hypotenuse of a triangle, which means the sides, my x's, have to be smaller than 14. So looking at your answer choices, C and D are both numbers that are bigger than 14, so we can't use C or D, and we really were picking between A and B. Those are the only two even candidates for the right answer. we're looking for A, 7 square root 2.